So first, I'm going to share something that's not in today's readings. This is we'll get to this shortly in Acts. This is Paul talking to the Athenians that they should seek the Lord if haply they might feel after him and find him, though he be not far from every one of us. Paul is talking there, and we'll get to this in a couple days, about the innate inborn human desire to seek and worship God, even if we don't know who God is. I call this Geist Lieben. It's my fancy sort of pseudo sociological scientific way of talking about love of the spirit, love for the spirit, the thing in us that wants to worship, the thing in us that even if we're atheists, somehow we seek something better and more noble and beyond ourselves. This is an inborn human desire, but it can be perverted. It needs to be properly channeled. Otherwise, people end up in mind control cults. They're members of the Moonies or other organizations that take this desire to worship and to serve and twist it and use it for the advantages of the men who are in charge of these mind control cults. Now, we see this throughout Scripture. We see that, as St. Paul says, we feel for God. We search for him blindly through human history. But God takes this group of people, this strange little group of people in the Middle East, and forms them to be his people, a people he names Israel, which means he who struggles with God, he who wrestles with God, or he who struggles to find and know God. Once this people is formed by God in history, they know him in a way that they can't forget. Because if they forget that they have been formed by him and they are now his people, they will be backpedaling. They will be turning away. It would be like the United States going back to a monarchy. It would be like us taking a giant step backwards. As Neil Armstrong said when he first stepped on the moon, and I remember this day, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. The formation of the people of Israel was we would say, the sort of beginning in history of the fullness of God's revelation to us human beings. And if we turn back from that, we are taking one giant leap backwards for man, one giant leap backwards for mankind. Paul will talk about this later in the book of Acts. But today in Acts, we see Paul and Barnabas hailed as gods because a miracle was worked through Paul. A lame man walks, and they want to sacrifice animals to Paul and Barnabas. They think Barnabas is Zeus and Paul is Hermes. And Paul and Barnabas have to plead with them. They tear at their clothes. They are desperately pleading with these people, don't worship us. Don't take your desire for that which is above and beyond your existence and direct it in the wrong way, which is worshiping mere human beings. We are only messengers and prophets of the true God. Even our miracles are wrought by his power, not by our own. We see this working out also in 1 Kings and in Ezekiel. And I want to show you, though, the imagery. The imagery isn't so much, oh, the people of God have taken a big step backward. The imagery is more pointed. If we look at Ezekiel, we're going to see what we will see later this semester when we read Hosea, or at least selections from Hosea. So if we go to Ezekiel, first of all, God tells Ezekiel to tell the people of Jerusalem, yet I will leave some of you alive. When you have among the nations some who escape the sword, and when you are scattered through the countries, then those of you who escape will remember me among the nations where they are carried captive. Remember the sign from yesterday. Take some of your hair and save it, while the rest of it is either burned or struck with the sword or scattered through the wind. There will be a remnant, and the remnant will remember. They will have learned the lesson of what happens through idolatry, through being disobedient to the God who has formed you. They will remember me, how I have been broken over their whoring heart that has departed from me, and over their eyes that go whoring after their idols. And they will be loathsome in their own sight for the evils that they have committed, for all their abominations. God says, I have been broken. My heart has been broken by the whoring of my people. He's not pulling punches. My people have whored themselves out, is what he means. They have acted like prostitutes for false gods. They have given their treasure and that which should be kept pristine and saved for their husband, the true God, and they have sold it to the Baals and the Molochs and the false gods that they have at times even sacrificed their children to. So then you will understand a bit about Elijah's motivation, Elijah's emotions, if we look here at 1 Kings. Then Elijah said to all the people, come here to me. They came to him and he repaired the altar of the Lord. The first thing Elijah does in this contest between Elijah, the only remaining prophet of God the Father, the only one left, the others have been exiled or killed by Ahab. Ahab, who has cultivated these 450 prophets to false gods, to Baal and the other false gods. So this is the one prophet of God versus the 450 prophets of the false god. The first thing Elijah does is he repairs the altar using what Paul would call the living stones of the church. And he uses 12 stones to represent the 12 tribes of Israel, because Israel are the people of God, the people who struggle with God, the people who struggle for God, struggle to find, know him, and live out his precepts. Now, normally, when God is referred to in the Old Testament characters say, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob's name is changed to Israel after he wrestles with the angel in the book of Genesis. But Elijah doesn't say the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Down here, verse 36, at the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. He's reminding God and the people, God doesn't really need to be reminded of this, that Jacob is Israel. The people of God have changed. They've been given a new name and a new identity, and that identity is expressed in their following God and their attempts to worship the true God, so that their Geist, Lieben, or their desire to worship is not perverted or turned in the wrong direction toward child sacrifice, toward the Baals, toward the false prophets and the bad kings who encourage them, because bad kings and bad politicians love lies, and they love prophets who lie and spread the lie. Now, of course, you will be shocked and you will say to me in your comments, wait a minute, Elijah has 450 human beings killed, the false prophets, after God comes down and burns Elijah's sacrifice, but not the sacrifice to Baal. Yeah, he does. You can make of that what you will, but at the very least, it expresses the incompatibility between a false worship and a true one. We have been made as the people of God. We continue as Israel, as the new Israel, as the church. We continue to struggle with God and to struggle for God and to feel out for him, as Paul says. And so we are called not to take one giant step or one giant leap backwards. We are called to continue on this arduous and difficult path to work out our salvation in fear and trembling. We are called to continue to seek, know, and live the truth. So if you encounter false prophets and people who make a living by lying, or who advance their agenda, either in politics or in other arenas, through the lie, you must call them out. That's part of our mission as the people of God. Otherwise, we deserve to be burned and slaughtered with the 450 false prophets if we go whoring after the false gods.